John Updike has been called one of America's most eminent men of letters. His prolific career spanned almost 4 decades and includes over 40 books of fiction, criticism, poetry, and drama. His Pulitzer Prize-winning Rabbit series chronicled Middle America over the years. His latest book turns us into the future to explore the timeless story of aging. Towards the End of Time is his 18th novel, and I am pleased to have him here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, I'm here. This is all interesting, including this cover, which I'll get to in a moment. But tell me what motivated you to want to make this exploration into subject matter.
After my previous novel, which was called In the Beauty of the Lilies and was about a family's history and involved a lot of third-person narrative, a lot of research into what happened, I wanted to give myself a change, write about a period when nobody knew what happened, and also a somewhat more intimate novel, first-person narrative. So we have this elderly man sitting on a hilltop in Massachusetts at the age of 66, and the year is 2020.
Did we like Ben?
I liked him. Some reviewers don't seem to.
They don't. They think he's misogynist and all this other stuff.
He's a crusty. He has these rough edges. But don't we all? No, he's an American male of a certain type. I saw him as kind of a strong, bull-necked kind of guy, turned bull. I mean, a lot of, and kind of like the cover, actually.
Well, that's what I was coming to. Why? I mean, this is what's this piece?
Originally, the jacket had only the lettering, and it seemed a little stark. I designed it. I thought it should be modernistic sans serif, and they thought it was a little bleak. And I happened to see that head. It's an Egyptian priest in about the 2nd millennium BC, and I said, "There's my guy," and so let's use it. And so they did. I think it's handsome.
I do too. But if someone wonders if it's about the future, why you went back to it raises that question.
It's a strange novel. It also has bits of the past in it. It's somehow about parallel universes or many worlds. Many worlds is not a theory.
Towards the End of Time, your last book, you began with the title, didn't you?
I guess I said that, didn't I?
You did. Well, yes, you did. That's where I got it.
I hope I didn't lie. You're right, I did. I was long interested in that particular combination of words. This combination I wasn't so happy about, but I could never think of a better title. It's sort of a strange title. Also, it's uncomfortably close to Till the End of Time, which we all used to shuffle to as teenagers.
You and I did.
But it seemed to be what it was about.
The book is saying that. I'm trying to remember who sang that, but go ahead.
The end. I remember there was a great sort of waltz, almost like a waltz.
Right.
Yes. What were we saying?
We're talking about the title and whether you began with the title.
Right. It was some way meant to be an essay on time, an exploration of time as this man approaches the end of his time, and also we're in future time, and he talks about not just year 2020, but goes ahead indeed to the end of the universe. So in some way, it's about time as this invisible entity which keeps doing things to us, right? Gives us wrinkles, gray hair.
Well, yes. Is author Updike sort of musing about this in his own life, or is it just simply seemed an appropriate subject to write about that he had not yet touched?
The man is 2 years older than I, so he is somewhat in advance of me in the march of time, but not an awful lot. Some of his thoughts are my own. Some of his perceptions belong to me, but I thought of him as a fictional character. I don't feel wed to Ben Turnbull.
But are you reflecting on sort of mortality and...
I'm afraid I am.
Are you really?
I'm afraid I am. I feel very mortal. Always have felt somewhat mortal, but now that I'm 65, I feel extra mortal, yes.
But you look in great shape. You have vigor. Every time you come here, you seem to have you have a spirited...
Many the vigorous 65-year-old is suddenly struck down, you know.
Yes,
you never know what's going to pop.
So you think about that?
A bit. Not too much. I don't think I'm morbid, but of course I should be sort of doing a wrap-up of some kind. Some of my books have been wrap-ups, collected poems. Well, why would you collect your poems except you're getting ready for a journey? This book unpacks a certain set of concerns or images that I had, and yeah, I'm packing my bag a little bit. But I say this, and yet I'm not sure I really mean it, you know.
I'm not either.
I'm really pretty cheerful.
I'm not either.
I'm really a pretty cheerful, blindly optimistic person.
But you do think about it. So a part of you thinks about it, and the other part moves on with the great optimism you have.
I'm certainly aware of aging and, you know, everything. The mirror, golf, they all tell me that I'm not getting any younger.
You told me as we sat down.
It's getting slightly better, but it's basically a kind of
But it seems to have a ceiling.
It's feeble. A ceiling. I've reached that's annoying ceiling. That's true. Very frustrating because you feel like yourself, and yet your good drives aren't as good as they used to be.
Yeah. It's like losing a step if you're...
It's losing a step if you're a runner,
lose a couple of yards.
player.
Yeah, right. Did 2020, the year is 2020. Is that sort of 2020 hindsight, or is it just
I picked it because it was easy for me to remember. And 2020, it seemed kind of jazzy and vaguely symbolic, yes, of something. 2020 hindsight is pretty good, really. I can't do anything better with it, but it just was a year that has a kind of very futuristic sound. It's like you won't get there. Of course, somebody will get there.
So like 1984 had a futuristic sound
for
a long time.
It acquired one, and then it came and went. And, you know, a futuristic novel, once the year has come and gone, is kind of dead in the water, I'm afraid. Because the reader can say, that didn't happen in 1984. This was a silly book.
When you sat down to write this, did you know where it would end?
Dimly. I was following the weather. I've always liked books that chart the course of a year through entries about nature, and I wanted to write that kind of a book. It's a little like Walden, a little like a book by Hal Borland, so he very carefully notes when the seasons change. So I knew it would end in the beginning of fall, yes. It begins in winter, goes through spring and summer, ends in fall. And something about the deer, yes, the deer would have to be resolved, the whole issue of the deer, the beautiful deer that he longs for.
The deer is a fantasy object here.
The deer is kind of a love object, yes. And also a symbol of freedom of the other. The wife hates the deer. The man loves the deer, wants the deer. I don't know, yeah, but somehow you had to wind up the deer.
If this doesn't hook them, I don't know what will.
The deer part of it. Listen, it's about people and deer. It's the new thing. There's a lot of deer in the world now, you know.
Well, for many people, too many, who have farms and watch their flowers being eaten up.
They eat a lot. They're hungry. Well,
somebody said to me over the weekend, I was in North Carolina, and I was talking to someone, and there were a lot of deer. We saw lots of deer on the road, and someone said to me, I've gotten over my Bambi part.
They become a nuisance, like big rats in a way, a plague. A plague of deer is affecting the Northeast.
Someone calls them big rat. They're big rats,
I know,
big roads.
But they have such beautiful faces
glide.
and muzzles. Yeah, the way they move is very spooky.
It's the grace of the move.
It's angelic.
Yeah, it really is. When I look at this, there are also discussions of things like quantum interdependence, indeterminacy, and Heisenberg, and all of this stuff. How do you know about that, is my question.
Well, do I know enough about it, though? I thought I knew enough to kind of base a novel on it, to try to make a quantum novel in which the man's life jumps. You know, the quantum jumps, you can't measure it. You try to measure it, and something it slips away. You can only measure one thing at a time. The quantum is a funny thing, or the quantum system, the theory is strange at bottom. So I was trying in a way to write a novel that would in some way mirror the physical facts as they apparently exist in the universe. And that's why these past episodes come in too. Again, he's jumping. Your identity jumps. I think if you're retired and living alone on a hill and getting kind of senile, your mind might jump around like that.
10 acres on overlooking the water.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's a nice hill. It certainly is.
Yes,
I mean, it's your neighborhood, isn't it?
It is. It is kind of like my hill. And that's all I can say. My hill, not me, though.
How much of Ben is autobiographical? I mean, tell me what he as you know, I'm as interested in the novelist as the novel, always.
The hill is real, much as I described it. The house is somewhat real. The walk to the mailbox is kind of real, and you know that's been taken from me because now the Globe delivers to the door, and I can't walk down. And the rough curve of his life, I suppose, is somewhat mine, although since it's a futuristic novel, he is not born in 1932, but born somewhere in the 50s. So I had to rethink a bit that he's a baby boomer. He has a different kind of way of growing up. He wasn't as repressed as I was. So I tried to adjust for that. May not have totally succeeded.
You write daily?
Yes. I often skip Sunday. I'm enough of a Bible Belt Pennsylvanian that my mother used to be horrified when I'd try to rake the lawn or anything on a Sunday. So often I skip Sunday, but they're the 6 days, yes. I write in the morning, end around 1:20, sometimes go back to the desk, but that's when my writing time is, basically morning.
But you write at a word processor, don't you, at a computer?
In part. I think this book...
this was not.
Since the man was himself writing it, I also wrote it. I wrote it in hand, pencil on pieces of paper, and then I typed it into the computer, the word processor. It's more of a feeling. You're really closer to the texture of thought somehow when you're writing by hand.
Are you at the stage of success so that reviews either very good or very mild or bad.
Yes, I've seen those.
Don't
those
bother
exist.
you. Yes.
Those exist.
For everybody. For everybody. You don't put your foot out there without having somebody say, this is not as good as last time.
I was shocked when I was a much younger writer and got some really panning reviews. They weren't just they didn't like the book, but they didn't like me and wished I'd go away, and they really wished to exterminate me. Yeah. There I was, 25, just getting started, and or 27, let's say, and I was being exterminated. So I'm not quite as vulnerable perhaps, now as I was then, but no, one would rather have a good review than a bad one.
Of course you would. But here's the problem for you.
Yes, please explain it. I want to know.
I'll help you with your swing, and I'll help you with your problem. You come to the right table.
Yes.
The problem with you is that you've written so well that you are measured against everything you've done. And so people are going to say, how can such a gifted writer not be as good this time as he was last time, or not be, or he's brilliant this time and it continues the tradition, whatever they say, but you're always measured by your history.
I think that's true to some extent.
And if you hit home runs, then people are going to want to know why no home run.
Except writing, you don't know if he's hit a home run or not. Fortunately, it's not like baseball. It might turn out to be a home run. You know, Moby Dick was a home run, but nobody knew it for 70 years.
But explain that phenomenon to me, because I mean, how many books, I know that about Moby Dick was not a success when it was published.
Nope. No, it was a disappointing failure. And Melville's next book was even worse, but maybe that was a bad book. It's just that it was ahead of its time. It was too much, too rich. People weren't into that. I don't think they're into it now. How many people you know who really read Moby Dick with pleasure? It remains a kind of book that's taught. I read it with pleasure, but maybe because I thought I should. So yeah, there are books that time is not yet. This may be one. I don't know. I am measured against the Rabbit books to a degree, because people really loved that character. They came to love him. Some did, not everybody, but some. And so people look at me sadly saying, how could you have killed him? Yeah. As though I'd really killed him. Well, the answer is that it is my duty as a novelist to see him through. I thought that kind of man might well come to an early end. A lot of ex-athletes I've known, you know, they develop heart trouble. It's a penalty. You use your body hard at one point of your life, and so it seemed to me that I had to see him into not quite the grave, but the terminal hospital bed, and to make a saga of a life. This is a man's life. A life ends. Rabbit's life had to end, and I wanted to be there as a writer, so I don't know.
Was it sad for you when you wrote that?
Kind of a relief, actually. I'd been having heart pangs, and when I gave him the heart ailments, they lifted off of me. It was as if he carried them away. Transference. He carried them away for me. And toward the end there, when he goes down to Florida, kind of half wanting to die, I felt oddly free. I felt myself getting lighter and lighter. So it wasn't as sad for me as perhaps for my readers, or some of my readers.
That's an amazing thing.
Writers are cruel. Authors are cruel. We make and we destroy, like Kali, the Hindu god.
You have that Glenn in you. You could do it, couldn't you?
Well, I hated to do it. No, I loved him because he was kind to me.
You loved him, yeah, of course he was.
He was good to me. I mean,
yeah, but you
won me my prizes, such as they are.
Well, as great as they are. And they also, I mean, financially he was good to you, and from a reputation standpoint he was good to you?
Good in all ways.
In all ways. So, but his time came and went.
He was a brother to me and a good friend, and he opened me up. As a writer, I could see things through him that I couldn't see in any other means. You know, he just was a character who was interested in America.
So you can live inside a character and see things that you might not, apart from that character, see and feel.
I think so,
if you can really inhabit the body.
Every character is a kind of a window out, a window of perception, right? And Rabbit's way of perceiving, and also that present tense that he happened to live in. The present tense was a great discovery for me. It somehow lightened my prose. My prose tends to be heavy. I'm kind of although I don't seem so to you, I'm kind of a solemn thinker and all these phrases. And the present tense removes all that, removes the possibility of all that. So it just becomes one thing after another, kind of a dance you do through the moments. Very nice feeling.
So you're kind of a somber guy?
Probably. I mean, yes. No,
serious.
Did I mean somber? I meant, I don't know what
serious.
I am. Kind of pedantic. I'm kind of a pedantic guy, I think. I'm a frustrated professor or something. I mean, look at this book full of all those scientific facts.
Well, I know all that.
So that Rabbit freed me from the pedantic side of me, the fussy side of my prose. Became less fussy with him in charge. Yeah, characters.
Do you know what you're going to write next?
Oh, I have another character. I seem to be rounding up my characters. This is a Jewish writer called Henry Beck, who's somewhat older than I am, but he's still alive, I'm happy to report, and I'm trying to write a few stories about him and the literary life. Maybe a bad idea, but it's the only idea I have these days. I would hope to get that book out next fall.
I'm sure you will.
I try to get them out.
And you'll be here again next fall.
Will I really?
Of course you will. What do you like most about Ben?
He's kind of a charmer in a funny way, isn't he? Women like him. I like that about him. I rather envy his success.
He likes women.
He likes women, and women like him back, more or less. And I like that he was a solid citizen of a sort who's now trying to see through the solidity into the void beyond. He's become an old spider spinning his verbal web up there on the hill.
That doesn't induce you to read this, I don't know what. Toward the End of Time, a novel by John Updike. It is always great to have you here. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.